I'm Kaylee from Movieguide, and we're here at the Reagan premiere, so let's talk to the cast and crew. What do you think of when you hear the name Reagan?
My grandmother's crush. That's the first thing that comes to mind, because that's the reality. She was very excited when I got the role, very excited. But one of the things I found very interesting in my research was that he was the son of an alcoholic. And when I was researching the role, I always felt he had a sympathetic or compassionate look in his eye and a sincere look in his eye. And I kind of wondered where that came from. And I have no idea if this is the case, but there's some alcoholism way back in my family. And I can understand how that could be a difficult situation and how that might create a sense of compassion, of something that you could later use as a superpower, turn into something that can be used to help make the world a better place. And I think he did that. So that was very interesting to me in the learning process, that's where he came from, and that was his upbringing.
Oh, really?
So when working on the film, did it impact your perception of Reagan? I mean, you might have already answered it, but...
The answer that I gave plays into that a lot, because, he was such a sincere guy, and I think that's one of the reasons people loved him, or people called him the great communicator, was because he felt real. And I love that about him. I love that about any politician that's kind of themselves. That's like so nice and refreshing. So yeah, that was great.
Okay, so how did you prepare for playing Reagan when he was younger? There's no information about it, so you're kind of...
There's a picture when he was 16 years old as a lifeguard, and that's when I play him. I play him from 16 to like 30 or something like that. And the 16-year-old picture of him, he's like this skinny, so skinny. And I was like, Mamma Mia. So I had to lose like 15 pounds for the role, which is not easy to do, but I cut it. So that was hard. And then just try to get his accent down, but the youngest accent I could find of him, which was different than what you see when he's older. So it was challenging, but a blessing in the end. It was so fun.
So what from the film Reagan working on this that you want to take into your own life?
Being authentic, just being true, being yourself, standing up for what you believe in, not having any duality in you. That's an admirable quality.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to see the film Reagan, but I would also love to talk about some future projects that you have coming up.
Sure.
You're directing with Mel Gibson.
Yes, Monster Summer. Yes. You're going to see it?
Absolutely.
I love it.
Am I going to be terrified?
Okay, so our guiding light was scare, not scar. So there's some jump scares. It's going to be fun, but not scarring. To me, this is a spooky family adventure that's meant to watch with the whole family around Halloween. If you remember the Goosebumps or E.T. or even Stranger Things, it's very much maybe Stranger Things Season 1, not Season 4. Season 1 Stranger Things. It's very much that kind of vibe, something that the whole family can go to, worry-free entertainment. Nothing's going to scar you or create an awkward ride on the way home, awkward car ride on the way home that everyone has to talk about, none of that. It's a blast, and that's what I wanted, a popcorn movie with some good values that can be fun. Spooky, fun, exciting, all that.
I mean, your last name is Reagan.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you think of Reagan and this movie?
I think just learning about him and his presidency, he was, for me, I didn't know much about him because I'm so much younger than his generation, but it was great to learn about him, and I think it's always good to just learn more about history.
Yeah, because he was a bit before your time. What was the most surprising thing that you learned about Reagan, the man or the president?
There were a lot of things that I learned. I think it was good to know like a bunch of different details about his presidency and what he did. I don't want to get into specifics, but I think it's just good to know everything about a person and don't just look at them from one angle, but try to see them as a whole, because everyone has, their pros and cons, and I think overall it was just a great experience to learn about him.
Yeah. So when working on this film, how did this film impact your perception of Reagan?
I don't think the film really impacted my perception, and I'm still so young, and my values are changing all the time. So I wouldn't say that it impacted my impression too much, but I definitely did get to see a little bit on his personality and the insight. But when it comes to political views, I'm still so young. Yeah.
Of course. How did you choose to prepare for such a role?
So I did a lot of research. I read books, I watched movies, and I really try to get in the mind of Ronald Reagan. And there's no videos of him as a kid. I was saying that earlier. So I had to wing it a little bit on that. But I think I really did a good job. And there was some writing on it. So I think I did a good job of portraying who he was as a kid.
I think you did a great job. So I wanted to know what comes to mind when you hear the name Reagan.
Childhood. He was the first president I remember as a kid. Yeah. I mean, I was really young, but yeah. Yeah.
Did working on this film impact your perception of him in any way?
So the role I got to play was pretty incredible. Yeah, I got to experience and kind of learn who he was outside of being a president, outside of being a governor, outside of being an actor, as a human being. And riding horses, and his wife Nancy and his friends were really, really important to him. So that was a pretty cool part, pretty substantial part. So
When working on this film, what was the most surprising discovery you made about Ronald Reagan, the man, or the president?
well, I actually wasn't really familiar with the fact of how much of a horseman he was, and I only got to shoot that part of the movie. I never got to read any of the rest of the script. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I don't know anything else about him yet. So just his love for horses, his love for living at the ranch, his love for that kind of lifestyle and working with his hands. It's a pretty incredible part.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. I was geeking out the whole time just because my scene was set in the 1930s, and it was at a swimming hole, and so the swimsuits, I never imagined these people swam in like sweater material back then, and so it was enlightening and it was awesome. Great atmosphere. Yeah.
Was that the what was the hardest part in filming? You know, you're out the beach, you're wearing these costumes that you've never worn before.
Oh my gosh, honestly, I had such a good gig. I play a drowning girl, and honestly, I just got to be in the nice water and then scream and then swoon over young Ronald Reagan. So I have no complaints. It was awesome.
Did this movie, working on this film, or learning anything about it, did it impact your perception of Ronald Reagan, the man, or the president?
Oh my gosh, definitely, because I honestly wasn't even born when he was running, and I'm honestly just excited to get to know him through this movie. Especially, I feel like my generation is going to resonate with it, just and look into his life and who he was as a person, and I'm excited, yeah.
What should people expect when they come and watch this movie?
I feel like it's definitely a family-friendly, like bring your whole family kind of movie. Expect to laugh, expect to be shocked for sure, and expect to just witness some incredible acting from Dennis Quaid for real. So, and David Henry, everybody, it's gonna be awesome.
That's great. That's great. So, what's next for you? What's coming up next week?
Yeah, I'm putting out a single on August 23rd, so literally so soon. It's called "Someone Wake Me Up." It's just about kind of really hoping for true love still, and I'm just excited to share that side of myself with people. So,
Or what is the one thing that you think of when you hear the name Reagan?
What I think of is a guy who said, let's fight like hell till 6 o'clock, and then let's be friends. Let's fight for our policies, our agendas, and what we want to get what's best for the American people. And then afterwards, let's be friends and go have a beer. That's what I want people to walk away from this movie with.
So when researching this film, because you've been with this film for a while working on it, what was the most surprising discovery that you made?
Well, just doing all the research for this film was pretty amazing because, I didn't know when he was 11 or 12-year-olds that his mom was super religious, that his dad was an alcoholic. These are things I like, wow, that does form somebody into what they are when they grow up. So to me, it was just this journey. Like, I read it in the script, and then I went, okay, I'm going to do more research on this. So I read a lot of books and found out that this is true, and then I just tried to add that authenticity.
So how did researching and working on this film impact your perception of Reagan?
Well, I voted for him when I was 18 years old in 1980, so I'm old. But I liked him. But as I did the film and dug deeper to what he was going through, I learned so much. And things make a lot more sense. And whether you love him or hate him or like him or just don't like him that much, it's at least worth looking at to go, this is who he was. It's a very good, I think, just straightforward biopic.
And why do you think this film needed to come out today? Today's age and age.
Sorry, I'm sweating.
No, you're okay.
It's very interesting. We shot this 4 years ago in 2020 with the idea that it would come out in 2021. That was our intention. It was never intended to come out in an election year. However, now that I watch it as I'm, finishing and polishing the show, and I go, my gosh, that's just happened, an assassination attempt. Oh my gosh, all of the debates. That's going on, the students on campuses. So what it does is when you watch it, you go, my gosh, 40 years ago, the same thing was happening as it is today.
Hey, that's great. Who do you think should come and watch this movie? Who do you think this movie is really for?
I think this movie is for everybody. I mean, it's a biopic. I like watching good biopics because you will just learn about somebody. I mean, I don't care if I'm watching a biopic on Caesar. I want to find out about Caesar. If I'm watching a biopic on Lincoln that Spielberg did, I'm going to watch the whole movie, learn about him.
I want to know what comes up when you think of the name Reagan.
Love. Despite the political thing, despite the history thing, despite everything else, the 14 years of my life spent with this character. This guy loved people. He loved his country. He loved his wife. Boy, did he love his wife and his family. He loved God. And he loved the sense of mission that was bringing down the Berlin Wall. He himself was not the guy that did it, but without him, there was no Mr. Gorbachev to tear down this wall. And that was all just born out of love. And I think that was my biggest takeaway in this entire project.
I was going to ask, when working on this project, I'm sure there was a lot of research, a lot of discovery. What would be the most surprising thing that people wouldn't expect when they think of Reagan?
I think the most surprising thing was with his resume and everything he pulled off, he was one of the most humble people that ever lived, and always making fun of himself. And I think it comes back to that love thing.
Yeah.
He was just so comfortable in his own skin. I've been around a few political people in my life. They're mostly not that comfortable in their own skin, but he was.
Yeah.
He was.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So what do you hope people take away after they come watching this film?
What's possible. And I mean that at us as a people, not politically, not historically or anything, but, I grew up in a time with, if we'd have had social media, it would have been as toxic as it is now.
Right.
But we didn't have it. But what nobody could ever take away from Ronald Reagan is he had respect for everybody that ever crossed his path, whether they agree with him or not. And I think that was the difference. And I think we can have that again. I know we can. And that's what this movie's about. It's not a big political commercial. It's a life story about a guy who wins.
Yeah.
Working on I think one of the biggest challenges was that the original script had 400 scenes in it. And it took us from the 20s, not to the 90s. And so breaking that down took me a bunch of weeks. And we also developed looks about 7 different looks for the 20s and all the way to the 90s. And have different looks, for the Contra affair, for those sequences where it gets dramatic and pretty dark. And the rest was finding the right locations, and be correct in any way we could. And we shot at the Reagan Ranch, where they actually lived. For periods of that time, we shot at the Reagan Library in Air Force One, in Marine One, and so we tried as much as possible to be, true to the real story. Yeah. We did look at period footage, but mostly the most important thing for us was to be authentic. So the environment was more important than where Reagan had lived and all that stuff. So we really looked at what did the 20s look like, what did the 30s feel like, what did the 40s and 50s feel like, what did it feel like when he won the first presidency, what it looked like when he got to the second term, and what did it feel like when when the Contra affair happened? So there were ups and downs in his life, and so that's really what we focused on.
For me personally, digging into the early days of Hollywood, right, where Reagan was, he came in as an actor, then he was elected Screen Actors Guild president as a Democrat, right? Which is interesting to not, I knew that, but a lot of people would not know that. I don't think a lot of people know that. But he actually started out as a Democrat. But at that time, in 1937, when he was in Hollywood, that was only 20 years after the Russian Revolution, which is, a lot of people don't understand how close that was, right? So, the Soviets were just trying to figure things out themselves, and Lenin made it clear that he wanted to take over Hollywood. He wanted, because of that, of all the arts, film he thought was the most powerful in terms of influence in a culture. So he wanted to take over the screenwriters and have them write plays certain ways to influence the culture. And that I didn't quite understand that prior to digging into it and seeing just how bad it was, and how Ronald Reagan was it formed his viewpoint on how we need to take on the Communist Party. And those early years just incubated him to perfection for what he was going to do as president. And a lot of people, for me, I think a lot of people misunderstand Ronald Reagan in terms of he was an actor that kind of got to the end of his career and then went into politics. And that's 180 degrees not it. And a lot of people, on the other side of the aisle would dismiss him as like, oh yeah, he's kind of that bedtime for Bonzo thing, right? And to their detriment, they underestimated him. A lot of people did that. And perhaps he maybe even used that to his own advantage, right? But he was a far deeper thinker than people gave him credit for. I think he was misunderstood in that realm. But his clarity, his moral clarity, what was right and wrong, and what we're going to do, and why we're going to do it, and why we're not going to not do it, is really wonderful for me in reading through it.
That's great. That's great. So you mentioned the influence that Hollywood has on really the culture, the world. What do you hope that people, what do you hope the Reagan movie will influence people to do today?
Maybe there's a couple things. I mean, I'm really thought about it in any great detail. So off the top of my head, right? I'd love, for me, one of the most poignant moments in this movie is when Reagan meets Tip O'Neill at the inaugural night. And they both agree. I mean, they're two sides of the aisle, and they say, I don't want to give the movie away, but basically like, hey, after 6 o'clock, we're just two Irishmen having a beer. So the point is that we live in a political climate now where each side paints the other side as if they win, it's the end of democracy, right? And it's just, that's not healthy, right? But back then it was, look, we can disagree vehemently, but at the end of the day, we can have a beer together. We can still have friendly dialogue. It doesn't have to be the other side is evil. So I think we've lost that, and I'd love to see that sort of be patterned, to look at that and go, hey man, this is what it was, and it can be that again, right? We can disagree, but we don't have to hate each other in the process. So that would be nice to see if that can happen.
Kayla, good to meet you.
So why did you decide to take on the film Reagan?
Well, it's just such an interesting story that hadn't been told, and so we found the perfect actor to do it, Dennis Quaid, and so it's just kind of an all-American story, and has so many facets to it. From being growing up in a small town and Hollywood and Washington, and so it was just a great story to be able to tell.
There's so much research has happened for this movie. What was the most surprising discovery that you made?
I think just that he had a lot of failure in his life, and he didn't succeed until really late in his life, and kind of felt washed up at the age of 50, and gives us all hope that we haven't made it yet, but there's hope for us. So it's just a great all-American story.
What do you hope people take away when they see this film?
Just that in those days, they were able to get along, even though they had very different beliefs, they still found a way to get things done. And so I think people are yearning for that today, too.
Like, I'm a child of the 80s, so Reagan was the first president I remember. And I was a huge fan then. I've remained a huge fan now. So this is fun to see. A few of my friends made the movie, so I'm excited to support it, but also love seeing another portrayal of who I consider to be the best president ever.
Wow. What do you hope, what's a common misconception maybe that you hope the movie can break down and break apart about Reagan?
I think that we have a tendency nowadays to demonize anyone we disagree with. And so anytime we have an opportunity to see that even someone that, like Ronald Reagan or his wife Nancy or any people involved, I happen to politically align with them, but there are people who don't. But to see their humanity and to see that we all actually want similar things, we just maybe have different paths to get there or different ideas for how to do it. And that doesn't mean that people who disagree with us are evil. So I hope that movies like this can help that a little bit, just to say, okay, you might disagree with someone, but that doesn't mean they're the devil. Maybe we can actually have a conversation. Hopefully this movie will spark conversation.
Well, you may have already answered it, but we know a lot about Reagan, the president, but are there any aspects of Reagan, the man, that you hope people can take away and learn from in this day and age?
Yeah, well, I mean, before Ronald Reagan was in politics, he was in the movie business, which is my stock and trade, and I potentially could have political aspirations someday, so I'm always like, all right, how did he transition from show business into politics, and recognizing that they're very similar. So I think that finding out who he was and what motivated him to do this in the first place, I find really fascinating.
Have you been able to see any sneak peeks of the Reagan film?
No, I've seen just a clip, and I cannot wait. I mean, they both look perfect for this role. I cannot wait to be in there in the theater, just be taken away, taken into this story.
Beautiful. So what does the name Reagan mean to you?
Reagan? Oh, that's interesting. Well, I know Ronnie Reagan. I've known Ronnie for a long time. What does the name Reagan mean to me? Well, he was the president of the United States, and I'm imagining we're going to see a very complex relationship between him and his wife. I'm dying to learn more about the love story. Kind of maybe cleanse my palate from all the things that he did as president. But I'm open, I'm open. Yeah, well, Nancy, oh God, yeah. Charm gets you far in this world, doesn't it?
Right. So what do you hope people take away when they see this movie?
I hope they have a great experience. I hope we all do, I would imagine that it's going to be a good experience. They wouldn't be putting all this money into it, inviting everybody if it wasn't good. So.
So you were saying that you know him as Ronnie. What does the name when you hear
His son.
Oh, his
son, Ronnie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't know Mr. Reagan. He was a little before my time.
Well, in this particular case, he was the former president. And so for me, it was like, it was a time period when, we were all trying to reach across the aisle to each other, politically, So that's kind of like where it all starts in this area for me. But the number one thing here in this particular movie is the relationship between he and his wife, Nancy and Ronald, right? And so when they contacted me about doing a song, I mean, that's where my mind went. What was their relationship? How did they get along? How did they look at each other, right? What did they really feel when they were close to each other, right? And so it was kind of like, just going through the books, trying to figure it all out, looking things up on them, trying to get an idea what their relationship was. And from doing a little homework, I found out she was a huge part of what he was doing, because he basically ran everything by her. You know what I mean?
Does that sound familiar?
Yes, he's very good at asking.
Yeah, I mean, so therefore, it was kind of like, okay, right? So that showed me that he really had a lot of faith in what she had to say, right? So if someone has a lot of faith in you, right, it means they depend on you, right? So that meant for me that their love depended on each other, right? So now I got a basis to write from, a love that's dependent on each other, right? And so that's where I started off with that. And like I said, the first line in the song is, "First time I saw your face," right? I mean, it's like when I saw you, I knew right away that I could depend on you. I don't know why, but I could, right? And that's what love is. You don't really know why you love somebody half the time, right? You just know you're very attracted to them. So it was all about that depending on each other. So that's where the song came from.
That's beautiful.
Right? Yeah. Yes.
The soundtrack is gorgeous for this movie. What do you hope people experience or take away from when they listen to your song and the soundtrack as a whole?
Oh, well, good music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really, 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 really good music, right?
There's not a better compliment for him or the others who have written music than to just have people love it. That's the best compliment and the most reward that I think you can feel.
Yes.
When you're a part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are you guys excited to see the movie? Have you gotten any sneak peeks beforehand?
We did. We did.
We did. A few months ago, we did get a sneak peek because he needed to know exactly what he was writing music for.
Yeah.
So we're excited to see the final product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so from what you saw, did that change? Do you think that changed your perception of Reagan any? Did it have any impact?
It didn't change it per se, but it deepened it. Right? I didn't realize I would like it as much as I did.
It made me truly appreciate the relationship the two of them share.
Yeah. I
hope that's what other people understand with this movie.
Yeah, I think the movie brought that out. Even though you read about it, right? It's another thing when you actually see it. And of course we know it's a movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a movie, but still, it solidified what I had been reading, right? So it really helped.
We're excited to finally see ourselves on the screen.
We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
so.
we appear on screen. We're the band for the inaugural ball, where Dennis and Penelope come out and do the first dance.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we filmed.
Yeah, it's been 3 years.
And we recorded a version of Frankie Valli's "My Eyes Adored You" that you'll also hear in the film, as well as see us perform it. So we're really excited about our scene, but more than that, we're just really thrilled to see the whole movie.
Oh, that is so cool. That's so cool. So with your cover of My Eyes Adore You and performing in the movie, with being musicians, what is your favorite musical era?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we love so much music, but there's a certain element of throwback to our music. And my dad took me to see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers when I was 12, and B.B. King. Those were my first 2 concerts. So
we really connect with like Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, Tom Petty, a lot of 70s era, just a lot of really good musicians who write good songs, and it kind of has a timeless vibe to it.
Yeah.
So with this movie, who do you think the movie would be best suited for? Who should come see it?
I think anyone of any age should come see it. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I have gathered, I think it's very appropriate for people of all ages. And, it's really cool to have this movie filmed in our home state of Oklahoma as well.
Hi, thanks for watching and joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe and go check out Reagan in theaters on August 30th.
If you enjoy videos that follow your values like ours and you want to help us continue, go to movieguide.org/donate because we're actually a nonprofit. You may not know that, but we're working in Hollywood every day to help families have more choices that follows their values. And also subscribe right now.